Hello and welcome to the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery programming series for our current show, the 2023 Biennial Juried exhibition, juried by Dr. Melissa Crum, Yusuf Latif, and Jolene Powell. Today, we are thrilled to present artist Jana Pryor. As a brief reminder, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode. Please feel free to utilize that chat function and ask questions, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the talk. Also, please keep in mind that because we're presenting from separate locations, there may be some variation of bandwidth. So if one of us freezes up or the sound fluctuates, thanks in advance for bearing with us. All right, thanks all and welcome, Jana.
Hi, thank you. I want to say thank you to Kat and everyone at the Ohio Arts Council for the opportunity to share my work. Oh dear, I'm having an issue. Okay. I'm having, oh goodness gracious. Okay, I'll start over. My name is Jana Pryor and I'm a photographer. I'm currently living in Zanesville, Ohio. I'm originally from McConnellsville, a small town in southeast Ohio along the Muskingum River. I attended Ohio University in Athens, earning a BFA in photography, and then I received my MFA photography from Virginia Commonwealth University. As far as back as I can remember, I've always been fascinated with photography. I started out in the days of film in 110 cameras. This is my very first photo that I have taken. I was around 5 or 6 when I took this picture of my sister and the cat. My sister was taking a photography as a 4-H project and had instructed me on how to take the photo. Since I was so young, I wasn't allowed to play with the camera. I wish I had the photos that she took because in comparison, hers were blurry and out of focus. Over the years, I've thought about why I was originally drawn to photography. And I think one reason is it was a way for me to remember things. And also from an early age, I found out that taking photos was something I was good at and got complimented on. This is probably the second photo I have ever taken. I snuck into my parents' car and took a picture of my grandpa's horse. I really didn't think it out very well, realizing there would be photographic evidence that I did something I wasn't supposed to do, because I was repeatedly told not to mess with the camera. And yes, I did get in trouble for taking this photo. And around 12 or 13, my mom eventually bought me a 35mm camera. Still to this day, photographing is one of my favorite things to do. I can't imagine my life without some sort of camera in it. And here's a little background of my photography and how I started out. As part of my thesis at VCU, the majority of what I photographed were family and friends in Southeast Ohio, using a Mamiya 6.7 black and white film, T-Max film, and developed the negatives and then printed in the darkroom. The final images were printed 16 by 20 on Kodak Polymax paper. The name of the show was Private Dialogues. I started out, I wanted to photograph people in their environments and show how their personality was reflected in that. But it slowly turned into people in their collections. And I tried to show the old, young, different economical backgrounds, but majority is focused in southeastern Ohio. And I'm going to show some of my images. And these are, what I'm sharing is I took photos of photos and some were in framed behind glass, so there may be some glares and stuff. And this is my great uncle, my grandmother's brother, Edgar Hansen. This is my grandmother, Clara Young, and both of those lived in Stockport, Ohio. And this was Ben Graham. He was an eye doctor in Zanesville. He originally grew up in Stockport area and I believe was went to school with my mom. This is Lucy and Bill Harmon. Bill was a distant cousin, and they live in McConnellsville. And this is also Bill. When I approached him about, taking the photo, and I was like, I just want to get people and what they do and how they live. And his response was, well, this is what I do. Here it is. So this is Bill, and this is Brandy Phillips. She from Forest City, North Carolina. This is Cecil Brooks. He was a gunsmith from Lowell, Ohio, a little bit north of Marietta. He's well known in the area. And this is his gun shop. He had built his own log cabin. And this is my dad, Dana Pryor. This was the Studebaker truck that he bought with the money when he got out of the Army in the 50s. And a neighbor of my parents, Dave Work. And my great uncle Edgar again, he and my grandmother had a contest going on of who could get the most photos taken of. And I believe Edgar won. He was a very interesting man. He had many, many collections of different things. And this is George Clemens. He was a local photographer in McConnellsville. And the painting behind him was a mural by Leslie Cope. They were good friends. This is Elsie and Forrest Hanson. Forrest is my great uncle, another brother of my grandmother, and they lived in Marietta. And this is Kathy Watkins from Richmond, Virginia, and this was her angel collection. And this is Howard Ball. He worked with my dad, but he restored old trucks. And then this is my nephew when lived in Waterford, Ohio. So after grad school, I got a job as a sports photographer at a small weekly newspaper in Ohio. These are all shot with film. And over the years, I used different format cameras. This is a pinhole 4x5 camera with Polaroid film. This is a 4x5 monorail camera, Polaroid film again. And then majority of what I shot with was 35 millimeter. And I had various cameras over the years. This was a Special Olympics event. It's my grandmother and birthday party we had for her. And then my grandmother in the hospital. When I started out with a Pentax K1000, and then, but mainly over the years, I have used Nikon cameras. And this is taken with a medium format 645 that I developed the film and then scanned in. And this is with a Seagull camera. It's a cheap twin lens camera. It's around $100. I think it was made in Russia. And Holga cameras. Holga is a plastic camera, a medium format with a plastic lens. Holgas are known for their soft focus and vignetting. The camera originally comes with a rectangle format, but with being plastic, you can make it into, you can cut it to make it into square. Oops. What I love about these cameras is the softness of the image. With my thesis work, these are more about being super sharp and trying to get the details, and Holgas are soft and dreamy. My influences are a wide array of different artists, and to name a few, Emmett Gowan, he's a photographer from Virginia, and he shot with an 8x10 camera, but his images feel very fluid and non-posed. If anyone has shot with these cameras, they're large and cumbersome, and they're a pain to focus. His early work, he photographed his family and his wife Edith. Julia Margaret Cameron was one of the most important and innovative photographers of the 19th century. She received her first camera at age 48 in 1863, and she is known for her soft focus and out of focus dreamy portraits. Francesca Woodman is a self-portrait artist from the late 70s and early 80s. Her entire body of work was produced, creating just over 8 short years. She committed suicide when she was 22 in 1981. Her photographs explore many themes such as relationships, sexuality, body image, alienation, isolation. And David Lynch, the film The Lost Highway was a huge influence on lighting for me, especially low light. I have for years tried to emulate his low lighting. And Rembrandt lighting, I don't think I need to say anything more about Rembrandt. He has influenced many artists in many different genres. Edward Hopper, whose work often display melancholy and isolation. I am drawn to his work for its quiet moments. And Sarah Moon, she's a fashion photographer that incorporated movement and a unique editing style. And Brooke Shaden, she's a contemporary photographer that shoots mainly self-portraits, innovated a lot of ways for shooting, especially conceptual and levitation style photography. She has been very influential to me in how I create my artwork. Many photographers get hung up on equipment and lighting, and most of her images are shot within her home using natural light and simple household lights, and not shot in a studio with expensive equipment. So seeing how I started out in the style of photography, I did long for a bit of more creative approach. I was a little late to the digital world, getting my first digital camera in 2007. My first digital camera was a small camera pen, a camera in the shape of a writing pen. The images created are only 3 inches wide at 72 dpi, and these images on the screen are from that, and it's literally the actual size of the image. During this time, I viewed digital as a passing phase, thinking nothing would ever replace film, and viewed these cameras as toys. I wasn't impressed with the results I was seeing with other photographers, and so I really didn't take digital seriously. And then my good friend Jeff gave me a point and shoot, a little Canon Sure Shot. I have worked in Photoshop since the late 90s, but mainly was shooting film and importing into Photoshop. And needless to say, this little camera changed everything. I can easily say digital has changed my photography. At first, my digital photography was more about experimenting with techniques and trying to achieve a certain looks that I wanted to achieve with film and in a dark room, but I didn't have the time, the money, or the skills. I really like the look of old images, rough, worn, painterly, and scratched. During this time, I had become obsessed, and that's putting it mildly, with the square format. I had to teach myself a new way of seeing and composing images. I did not use a square format camera, but rather I cropped the images to square. And also, I'm a big fan of using negative space. So with digital, I started taking self-portraits, and I had started playing around with them earlier with Polaroids when I lived in Richmond. And this is one of my earliest Polaroid self-portraits. I thought it was wasting film taking photos of myself, but with digital, it opened up for experimenting. Also, I've always felt that photos with people in them are more interesting. Digital was a way to produce ideas in my head and to experiment with Photoshop, with me being the only model available, working again with style and technique rather than content. And also with digital, you can instantly check to see if you if you got the image you want. I remember shooting with film and never quite knowing if I was successful when I shot until I developed my film. So self-portraits, they've been around for forever in photography. As long as, photography is around, there's been self-portraits. Um, and there's a huge difference between selfies and self-portraits. Selfies are more casual shots, whereas self-portraits are more of a self-representation or what one feels about themselves. And three reasons for me to shoot them is self-expression, convenient self as model, and therapy. From my experience, self-portraits are therapeutic. The process of tuning in with yourself and expressing what's inside you can be healing. And sometimes you might not be even aware what's going on until you step in front of the camera. Since there's no one watching, self-portraits are a very safe way to explore your emotions in a way that words aren't necessary. Words have always been an issue for me. I often can't describe what I'm feeling in words, but with my self-portraits, I can show my emotions. And during the early 2010s, levitation and conceptual photos became popular on Flickr, which is an online photo sharing site. These images I created are more about learning Photoshop skills and creating surreal images. The style is very much Photoshop based, but trying to create these images really helped me learn a lot about the program. And I mentioned before that I viewed digital as more as a way of achieving a certain look, but I think the moment that my photography has changed is when I realized I could create my own world rather than waiting for something to happen. With analog photography, there's a bit of an idea of waiting for the decisive moment. And when I got out of that frame of mind, it made a huge difference with my images. Digital also made it easier to create this new world. In some ways, analog photography was more about recording or documenting what had happened. That's for me mainly. So I've had one course in grad school about Photoshop, so I'm pretty much self-taught. I've watched a lot of tutorials on how to work in it, and the program is constantly changing. And when I started out, I worked in Photoshop 3. Will tell you how old I am. And I'm going to sound like an old lady, but photographers these days don't know how easy they have it, especially with the recent changes with generative fill and AI. In my opinion, Photoshop, in a way, has made it to be a lazy photographer. I've even catch myself thinking, "Oh, I'll fix that later," rather than to compose a better image or wait for better lighting. Looking back over the years and not aware at the time, I realized I was photographing my depression, something I've battled with all my life, but was officially diagnosed in 2016. Photography has helped me deal with, especially being an introvert and being a little bit socially awkward. Taking photos is a way I could speak without using words. I started taking more photos as a digital diary, but then my work started to evolve in dealing with issues within my life, themes of quietness, introspection, solitude, often reflected. And a lot of my past work was about relationships, breakups, and ultimately loneliness. My process for coming up for images varies. Sometimes I'll start out with a clear idea and execution, but a lot of times I will experiment with ideas just, and to get the look that I want. I am influenced by other artists, their art, light, nature, events in my life. Some images are considered more straight photography, others are heavily photoshopped. Majority of my self-portraits are shot with natural light inside my house. And when I shoot, I mainly use the rule of thirds when composing. When learning photography, I was taught to print full frame, no cropping. It was so ingrained in me that it was very hard to break. And even today, it is an issue with cropping. But cropping to square has helped me let go of some of that. But even then, I'm using rule of thirds when I crop. When with composing, I choose what I want to include in the image is very important. What you see in the frame is I meant that to be there. And if you ask my framer, he will agree with that. He shakes his head at me every time I bring something in. The edges are equally important as well as the main subject, especially when I use textures. But I can't say I use any specific way of composing all the time. I shoot and crop images based on if it feels right to me, and I shoot for me and hope others like it. I often combine quotes with images. I try not to steer the narrative of the image, wanting the viewer to interpret what they see, but at times we'll use quotes to add to the experience. And this photo here is actually, I taped battery powered tea lights to my back. So, I mean, it's pretty much a straight photograph. This one is not. There's no butterfly there. Um, and if you've noticed, there have been some little furry creatures popping in my photos. Getting out my camera and setting up my tripod is just, it seems to be a signal that fun is going to happen. So they all seem to jump in. And this is my oldest, is Casper. He has been sneaking in my photos for the past 15 years. For most of the images, my intention is not to include them. But ultimately their inclusion has added to the image, and it adds humor too. And like this image here, I didn't even know he was there. I was just taking photos, and then when I was editing, I saw his head pop out, and it's one of my favorite of him. And he always has a way that he's concerned about me and what I'm doing. And of course, he's passing judgment, as cats do. And this photo is not photoshopped, it is straight. I did put a party hat on him, and he was not happy about it. And apparently, if you put a hat on a cat, they freeze. He just kind of sat there like he was terrified. And this is Amelia. She is a 13-year-old Chiweenie. That's a mix between a Chihuahua and a Wiener dog. And she's my little shadow. And this is Henri. He is a stray that adopted me in the good life. And he's always curious about what I'm doing. I often use double exposures in my photography, and to show a way of duality of life. We experience light and dark, joy and sadness. Double exposure is a technique that layers two different images, basically combining two photographs into one. This technique creates a surreal feeling for my photos, and the two photographs can work together to convey a deeper meaning. People often use double exposure to convey emotional insight, show progression of movement, or relate to change in time. I shoot double exposures a couple different ways. One way, if your camera allows, is to take a double exposure within the camera. This image and the previous four are all in-camera double exposures. And the second way is to combine two or more images of Photoshop and work with blend modes with layers. So another process I use is textures. I've repeatedly mentioned I use textures, creating a painterly look and achieve that worn, scratched appearance. A texture layer can be something as simple as a photo of an old sheet of paper to a photo of clouds. And here's an example of how I use them. On the left is the straight photograph, and on the right, I use two different textures in this. One texture to get that kind of grungy look in the background, and the other one is to get the water effect. And this here is one of my earliest pieces where I was trying to achieve that look, but I just didn't have enough knowledge about Photoshop. So you can see my progression of how I started out and to where I'm at. And textures are a simple way to give an otherwise ordinary image a more artistic and creative edge. And I often use birds and clouds in my photography. To me, both mean freedom from my problems, to rise above everything. I also use brushes in Photoshop. Brushes can be created in any form, and this brush was made to look like tape. I think I probably used about like 5 different textures in this image just to get the look I want. So I do shoot in color. I'm not solely black and white, and I often choose, or sometimes I choose to use color in the final image. In my opinion, sometimes I find that color can be distracting. The image becomes more about the color than what's actually in the photo. And for me, black and white images is often easier to see and interpret the main focus of the picture. And often I will make the photo black and white and then add color using a texture. I use color especially when I want to add to the mood. But making a black and white photo isn't just about removing color, and not every photo will be successful as black and white. So as you can see, I love black and white photography, and to quote Ted Grant, when you photograph people in color, you photograph their clothes, but when you photograph people in black and white, you photograph their soul. Black and white is a great way to show contrast, lines, emotions, and interplay between light and shadow. Lines and composition take center stage, so there's no way of hiding behind the color. You have a strong composition when it holds up without any color. And there's also just a timeless factor to black and white. There's just less distractions and there's focus on light. Light is just as important as subject in the photo as the subject. Light is a huge factor in how I shoot. I especially love shooting in lower light with using window light as my main light source, and at times light can be even the subject of a photo. And to quote Fan Ho, a Chinese photographer, light is the soul of the photograph. So I can't say I'm the most technical photographer. I don't get hung up on gear or pixels. One of my favorite cameras is the Hoga, which is plastic, but I know and care enough about technical to try to achieve the highest quality I can. And photography is just a mixture of many disciplines. It includes creative as well as technical components, and artistic photographers very different much from the technical photographers. The goal of the artistic is not to achieve anything perfect. They see photography as art. They're more interested in creativity, innovation, experimentation. They like images that are emotional, unusual, shocking, blurry, and shadow given cool effects. They just follow their instinct. Technical, obviously, is more concerning about sharpness and creating the perfect image. My goal with taking photos is to tell a story and to make the viewer feel something. The story may not be clear, but there's almost always one there. I've been told my self-portraits suggest stories with open endings, inviting those looking into my world to finish my sentences. Photography for me is not just looking, it's feeling. And I like the idea I can create images in my house using natural light, not using super expensive equipment or lighting equipment. And I don't like to get hung up what I don't have, but focus on using what I do have and use it the best of my ability. I think a lot of photographers think if they have the best equipment, they can take a great image. But if you take what you have and learn the limitations of your camera, you can take compelling photos with any camera. I've seen images like with a oatmeal pinhole. Ooh, I have a friend coming in. Oatmeal pinhole camera that are amazing. I had a professor once say there's two extremes. There's the artistic and the technical, and the really good photographers are the ones that are in the middle of the two spectrums. I'd like to think I'm in the middle, but it's everyone else to decide. Emotion is a key factor in how I shoot. I want the viewer to feel something when looking at my photos. So before I start, this is a collaboration I did with a Swedish musician. I'm supposed to apologize to Sweden for my pronunciations because I'm going to mess these up. I collaborated with Swedish musician Ted Neumann with the show Voice Roast, and roast is the Swedish word for voice. The goal of this collaboration with combining music and photography was to enhance the experience for the viewer and listener. I wanted just a new way to for viewers to interact with my art. But our theme of this collaboration was that we're sharing our voice, each sharing our art without words. I will give an example of Ted's music. The song title is 101. Ted created the song after I sent him a photo of my new antidepressant pill, which had 101 imprinted on it, and I'll play a little bit of his music. This is the first piece I created for this collaboration. This is printed on tea bags, and I will discuss my technique with tea bags a little bit later. Both Ted and I are dealing with our own inner demons. For myself, was depression and anxiety, and for Ted, it was mental and physical fatigue. Both of us were overwhelmed by the world we live in, and we wanted to bring attention to life of an unbalanced mind. We paired up images with his music for the viewers, and we also worked on a video which was projected an angle on the wall for a distorted view. And this image I created, those squiggly lines was the last thing my mom wrote before she passed away. She was trying to tell me something, and I had saved that piece of paper and scanned it in and added it to the image. Even though we had video and music playing in the hallway, we had stations with headphones that paired up with songs of different images, so you could get the experience of the art with the music. Ted created 8 songs to go with 8 pieces of mine. A reoccurring theme I use is to creating an image is to create it, to break apart and then put it back together and to reform the image. Through the rebuilding, it's not as perfect as the original image, but showing the beauty and the imperfections. To symbolize that you can break down and rebuild yourself. You may not be perfect, but you can be just as good before the breakdown. We both created our pieces working off each other. He would see photos I made and then create music, and I would create pieces after listening to his music. I've mentioned before, I use clouds and birds a lot. Both are symbolic to me of letting go with what's holding me down. And though both of us are 2 different people from different parts of the world using 2 completely different art forms, we in our way on the same wavelength, expressing the same emotion of our art. And you may ask, how did I meet a Swedish musician? I met Ted on MySpace back in 2007, and we became really good friends. We have not actually met in person, but we've maintained a close friendship over the years. And this collaboration came about when one day Ted mentioned when he looked at my photos, he imagined songs that went with them. And I thought this would be a great way to combine 2 different art forms into a unique experience. I began focusing on printing on non-traditional surfaces, fabric, Gampi paper, used tea bags, and this is the mock-up of the images to be printed on fabric. And for the exhibition, I had this printed on silk organza that was nearly transparent, and then used another piece of fabric to help you see the image. And I'm always looking for unique ways presenting my photographs. I printed on inkjet print on used tea bags. The creative use of tea bags has a new way of looking at what we deem expendable. And this tea bag piece is the largest to date I've created. It's around 8 feet tall. To create these pieces, I steep the tea bag in hot water like how you would if you're making a cup of tea, and then let them dry. Then I open each tea bag, empty it, and iron it before I print my photos on them. And then each tea bag is sewn together. And I also believe I became focused on new printing and presentations because I miss working in the darkroom. In the darkroom, it was a step-by-step process to get the final image. You could easily spend 6 hours working just to get one image. And I sort of missed this. Digital photography in some ways has made everything very easy to achieve and very quickly can achieve it. And the majority of digital photography are never printed, but is more made for sharing on social media. And this image is printed on Gampi paper. It's a Japanese paper that is very thin, almost translucent, like tissue paper, but at the same time, it's very strong. And this is just 2 images I printed, and then I combined together on 1x1 blocks. And so here's a couple mock-up of images and then the execution. This is a series of images I pieced together. Again, birds and clouds. And then this, I placed the images on 8x8 boxes and then stacked them against the wall. And this image here is, I tore apart and then pieced it back together. And here's the image from the exhibition. This is an actual photograph and it was printed 5 feet by 5 feet. Okay, so I've started a new collaboration with Ted and a local Zanesville artist, Rob Cook, titled Glitch. And glitch is a feeling of something is a bit off, a flaw, a malfunction, anything faulty. This feeling fit the 3 of us, an overall feeling about 2020 and the subsequent years of the pandemic, that things are not quite right, not in the world or in ourselves, and everything surrounding that year, coronavirus, politics, environmental issues, and the fear and anxiety in all of us. I had wanted to work with Ted again because I like having the exhibition with multiple art forms. I included good friend Rob Cook because I felt his artwork would be a good contrast against mine, but at the same time, how he composes his work is very similar to mine. Ted is the one who came up with the idea of Glitch, and showing how the 3 of us are dealing with the outbreak of coronavirus in completely different ways. We have started this collaboration 2020 during the pandemic, and unfortunately, we have stalled a bit since, and the project is still in progress. Personally, the pandemic and following years has really crushed my creativity. So Rob's approach to the series is to give old wood, vinyl, and excuse me, plastic a new purpose, taking old broken pieces and putting them together and creating new reclaimed beauty, making chaos into beautiful new contained form, and just basically making sense of the madness. Ted describes his music as patterns and rhythms that are something that are reflected in his daily routine. He had a severe case of COVID at the beginning of 2020. The following isolation, loneliness had effect on his mental state as well, dealing with the side effects of COVID. These patterns and rhythms were interrupted after trying to grasp this new glitched world that's out of tune. And here's a little bit of his song titled By Myself. For me, 2020 started off in a haze with the coronavirus outbreak and a subsequent quarantine. The year was a depressing and lonely time. My approach to glitch is to portray my emotions during this time. I took self-portraits that portray a sense of loneliness and the effects of social isolation has on the mental health and imagination. These photos are meant to look very straightforward, but they were heavily photoshopped, combining blurry portions and add extra limb or two. There's 3 legs there. I chose to use my bedroom due to the bedroom as the one room in the house that most people feel the most comfortable and relaxed in, the one room where you do dream, whether awake or asleep. And of course, you see all my furry friends have jumped in. I also created images that focus on foggy landscapes that leave you feeling a melancholy with the notion something is a bit off kilter. I chose to use fog as it is a metaphor for the unknown and what lies ahead between reality and non-reality and uncertainty about the future and beyond. I was inspired by artist Simon Stålenhag and his art from his book titled Tales from the Loop. He's a Swedish artist that paints retro futuristic images of a nostalgic alternative history. A lot of his images are showing normal scene, but there's something that's slightly off with his retelling of the past. And I tried to interpret glitch in a new way rather than a typical images of distortion and color separation. Glitch art is the practice of using digital or analog errors by corrupting digital data or physically manipulating electronic devices. I had originally started out with the style in mind, but I felt it was too cliche. I felt like I needed to put my own spin on the word glitch. And this is finally we get to the piece that was accepted in the 2023 Biennial show at Rife Gallery. I created this piece beginning of the year titled Hush. And this piece is how about women are often silenced and their words are not taken seriously. I was influenced by artist Peggy Washburn and her style for this piece. She often works at diptychs with a graphic design style. So when I have a vague idea what I want the final image to look like, but with this piece and along with many others, it was a little bit of serendipity on how it came together. I had created the self-portrait and I felt like it just needed something more. And I had scanned in a page from my third great grandfather's notebook from the 1840s and paired it with the self-portrait. As soon as I paired them up, I loved how it looked like it was gibberish coming out of my mouth. And for this show, I printed this on metal, and what I liked about the final print was like in different light, it actually kind of looked like things were moving. It had a little bit of shimmer to it. And this concludes my talk. I hope you enjoyed my work and got some insight in how I create my photography. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jana. Folks, if you have questions, go ahead and pop them into the chat. So Jana, a couple of questions that have already come in. How do you go about deciding whether you're going to make a piece that's black and white or color?
Mainly, it just depends on my mood. I think I am personally, I'm just drawn to black and white more than color. Uh, there's really, it just depends. There's no set way what I decide I'm going to do.
How about whether you use digital or analog photography?
Well, for the past several years, I've mainly been just digital. Um, Film photography has gotten very, very expensive, and that has a factor of not shooting as much film. Um, I think like I was trying to remember like a 5 pack of a medium format film, I think used to be around like $5. It's $50 now for 5 rolls of film. So that's a huge difference in why I'm not shooting film.
That makes a lot of sense. Um, so was your collaboration with TED shown in the US or Sweden or both? Did it travel?
It was shown in the US. We had a show here in Zanesville, and also we had an online show at Urban Art Space in Columbus.
Great,
That was during the pandemic. That's why we didn't have the physical show.
understood. So we have some comments, less questions, but comments. Jolene said, stunning work. Thanks for presenting.
Thank you.
Another person said, your pieces are so thought-provoking. Thank you for sharing. And then we do have a question. Do you also incorporate any printmaking techniques or some blends such as photogravure in your techniques?
I have not the photo, whatever you said. I have not. I can't say it right now. Um, I have not done that. I have done some printmaking work, but that was like undergrad. But I have recently, I'm just starting to get back into like trying to print them different ways. Like I said, digital, majority of what you take is never going to be printed. So I have been, and I missed that whole process of the darkroom. So I am trying to get back into doing printing different ways, though. Yes.
We have another comment from Chiquita that says, I really appreciate your amazing work. So I have another question that I like to ask artists. Take us through a day in the studio with you. How do you prepare to start your work? Is it a particular time of day? Do you shoot every day? Tell us a little bit about your practice.
Um, no, I don't shoot every day. For a while, I was. I do have a daytime job, so a lot of my shooting would just be after I got home from work or on the weekends, and it would just be to take, especially my self-portraits. It just depends on what I was feeling at that time. Did I want to do it? And so a lot of it was just be I shoot a lot in my house, so I don't really have a studio per se, but it depends on the lighting. If there was like really cool light coming in, is when I would take a photo too. And in my bedroom, for whatever reason, I just get the most beautiful light in that, and I think it's a little bit of a reflection of the light off other people's houses, so it's kind of soft and glowy. It all just depends on, what is going on that day. And for a while there, I was shooting every day, but I have not been. Not lately, no. Does that answer it, or do you need
You
more?
know that I love that. I think that's great. Oh, a great question from Pamela. Do you immediately work on your images after you shoot them, or do you usually wait?
I do immediately work on them, because usually, if I do shoot, especially self-portrait, I know, like, after like viewing them, I know what I'm going to do with them. So for the most part, I jump right in and do it, because if I'm shooting a photo, then I'm feeling creative. So, and you gotta jump on that creative feeling.
That's wonderful. All right, so for those that are interested in atmospheric photography and spanning the gap between fine art and what was the word that you used? It was
Analog?
fine art versus
Oh, the
um,
technical photographers and the,
technical. Thank you.
yeah.
So I do think you place yourself squarely in the middle there. So folks that are delving into that, what is your best piece of advice for getting started and keeping the momentum?
When I've had like different young people come ask me, and I'm like, the only thing I can tell you to do is just shoot. Just keep shooting. I love, I mean, like I said, I can't imagine my life without a camera. And I just love shooting. Just keep at it. Like when I first started, I was not a good photographer, but I just loved it so much. I just kept doing it. And you learn each time you do something. And so just keep at it, keep going.
Wonderful. Well, I think that that's a really excellent place for us to leave off. Thank you again, Jana, for the generosity of your time and talent. And thank you all for joining us for this Artist Talk by Jana Pryor as a part of our programming for the 2023 Biennial Juried Exhibition. Special thank you to our jurors, Dr. Melissa Crum, Yusuf Latif, and Jolene Powell. And a big thank you to all the participating artists, as well as the Ohio Arts Council's board, the Ohio legislature, and the governor who support the Ohio Arts Council, this great space, and of course, Ohio artists. Thanks everyone and have a great day.
Thank you.